settings of your computer or smartphone at medium level to prevent eye strain. Adjust your audio device to 50% to minimize the risk of hearing loss. If you are experiencing fatigue or lethargy, take a short break to do stretching. For your information, micro breaks is a short break from your job throughout the day. It can be done by doing breathing exercises, drinking a glass of water, taking some fresh air, and body stretching. The implementation of micro breaks into your work routine should be done after 20 to 30 minutes of working. Some of the benefits of doing micro breaks is it can reduce sprains and strains injuries, reduce stress and anxiety, improve concentration, and lastly, improve productivity and positivity. Jangan likadan alpa, kita belum minak. Avoid the 3 C's, which is a crowded places, confined spaces, and close conversations. And always practice the 3 W's, which is wash, wear, and wear. That's all for me, and thank you for your attention.
Welcome to the Faculty of Management Postgraduate Student Society University Technology Recognition Webinar session. Thank you to our advisor, Dr. Lorja Hilian, for your support to us, FMGSS Committee, to organize this webinar. I am Siti Fauzia Binti Muhammad Nur, and today I will be your moderator. For your information, this webinar will be recorded. Attendance link will be shared during the session. All viewers also invited to write your question regarding the topic in the chat box during the webinar. Our topic today is how to write a good journal paper. Okay, as we know, it is very important to all postgraduate students to write and publish a good journal paper in order to graduate. Okay, today we will be hearing from an expert speaker on this topic, Dr. Abdel Salam Musalim. How are you, Dr. Abdel Salam?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
For your information, currently Dr. Abdel Salam is in Ireland. Okay, firstly, let me introduce our speaker for today's webinar session. Dr. Abdel Salam Musalim is currently a lecturer and researcher at the School of Enterprise Computing and Digital Transformation, Technological University Dublin. He previously worked as a postdoctoral fellow at the Irish Institute of Digital Business at DCU and Razak Faculty of Technology and Informatics at University Technology Malaysia. Dr. Abdel Salam holds a PhD in Information Systems and Masters in Information Technology Management from UTM. He previously lectured in the School of Computing at the National College of Ireland and conducted several workshops and training on data analysis using Smart PLS, SLR, and he is a certified Mendeley advisor. Okay, Dr. Abdel Salam's research interests in areas related to social commerce, customer engagement, consumer behavior analytics, social media, and sustainable fashion. His research has been published in international conferences and peer-reviewed journals such as Computers and Education, International Journal of Consumer Studies, IJIM, and Journal of Service Marketing. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Abdel Salam to give his lecture on how to write a good journal paper. The floor is yours, Doctor. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Assalamu alaikum, good morning, good afternoon I think in Malaysia, or almost good evening now. It is 7:30 here in Dublin, and I think it's either
So early in the morning here, Doctor.
so yeah, the time difference is almost 8 hours.
Yes.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be back again to UTM. Thanks for Dr. Halina, and thanks for the PGSS Faculty of Management for this kind of edition. I'll share my screen. I have two screens here. I'm not sure. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, Doctor, we can.
Okay. So the topic today is it's very interesting, but it's kind of broad topic because how to write a good journal paper has different factors, different elements, and strategy.
Dua
But
petik di
today,
panas
I don't have to introduce myself. Thanks to Saeed for introducing me.
Enggak, nomor dua
So
kita.
today's session, will be go through these outlines like journal publications, a way of communication for PhD students, why we publish in journals. Before you start your publication, what you need to do, what are the considerations that you have to keep in mind, how to get started with your papers, structuring your paper. We'll talk about every section of your paper, like abstract, introduction, literature review, method, discussion, conclusion. Then we go to the review, and we call it R&R, or review and revision process, then after publication. So, as I said, usually publication between academic researchers, it's a way of communication. It's a way of how you communicate your research. So it's very, very important for you as whether you're a PhD student or researcher or faculty member to publish your work. So people can see your work, especially people are in your, we call them community of interest, or your research area. See your recent findings, research output of your research, and also to be active and people know you. So it's a way of research communication between scholars. If you look at Web of Science, for example, nowadays we have thousands of journals and publishers and indexed journals. According, for example, this is just one example of Web of Science. So Web of Science is one of the world's largest publisher in the world, and they have almost 171 million records of materials and journals, and they have 35,000 indexed journals, and they reach almost 2.9 billion citations. And among this, United States, it's at the top of this, of course, and you have China for the most cited and top papers. That is based on the citation of each article from this country. So as you can see, it's very crowded atmosphere, and as a PhD researcher or as a researcher, you don't know what research topic to choose, or if you already have a research topic and you don't know what journal you should target, or what is the structure of the paper that you look like, what kind of paper that you wanted to publish. So it's a kind of tricky environment where you have to be very specific in choosing your target journal, writing very well structure, and sometimes finding a good collaborator. You don't have to rely all the time on your supervisor, but especially for the PhD students, I think you are almost become a researcher now. So you have to depend on yourself, build your network, and find a good journalist or follow a couple of journals in your area of interest to be able to understand the way of publication or reaching to a very good journal publication. All right. So why we publish, right? So everyone has his own reasons of publishing papers. So some people, they have for PhD requirement, some faculty member for funding, or some of them that they need to get promoted. But at the end of the day, like editor or reviewer, they don't care about your reason, right? But everyone has his own reasons of publication. So according to Emerald, most of the people publish in journals for career. Okay? Then we have subject development, where you want to contribute to an area of research, or for your own business, etc. Right? So it's good to know what are the motivations behind your publication. Right? So that's very important to stress on. So to know why you're publishing, that will give you a very good motivations in stating this. So before you start your publication or your journey of publication or writing a paper, so I've put here a few considerations or a few points that you have to think of before even start writing your paper. All right. So, as a PhD student or like postdoc or faculty member, you have to check the originality of your idea. Like, as I said, now like we have a million of publications. I think Elsevier mentioned they have almost 30,000 publication or paper accepted per day. Or so you have to check if your research idea is still valid, version, and a good idea that is worth publication. Okay. And also you have to ask yourself, like, is what I'm doing new or interesting to the audience or to the editor of that journal? Is there any challenging things that you have to consider before you start your writing? What is the main challenging word that you should give a very good consideration to? So, as I said again, is the work is directly related to the current hot topic? Like, that's one of the points that I need to stress on. Like, try to find the new ideas. Okay, stress on new topics, hot topics that already, for example, ChatGPT nowadays, and or cryptocurrency, blockchain. So these are we have been in COVID for 3 years. So COVID-19 is still a relevant topic. And is your paper providing a solution or not? So you need to like answer these questions before you start your considering writing. Another thing, what are the type of the manuscript or the paper that you're planning to write? Like we have different type of papers, so you need to decide from the beginning what type of journal paper that you need to write. All right. So we have like, for example, full article, okay, or we call it empirical paper or original article. So these are one of the most important papers, and I think one of the papers that give you a chance to be published in at least peer-reviewed or Web of Science Index journal. Often substantial, complete piece of research, like you have your all results, you have everything completed. So we call it full article. Or it could be like letters, or we call it short communication, or sometimes we call them idea paper. Okay, so usually these are a quick, early communication of significant findings that you found. Okay, so you can share with them with we call them idea papers. But these are I think it's a bit advanced because you need to be very need to concise everything in like 1-2 pages of new findings and etc. Or it could be a review paper. Review papers, or sometimes we call them systematic reviews, are one of the shortcut to publish, especially if you're a PhD student and you don't have results yet. Okay, so usually when we start our PhD, your supervisor, go to your supervisor and ask you to start with doing literature review if you finalize your topic and you know the area you're doing. So your supervisors ask you to go now do literature review or go a systematic literature review. Most of the supervisors ask you to do an SLR. If you did it very well, I think you can publish your systematic review in journal articles. There are many journals now they accept publishing systematic reviews. Okay. You need to know who are you writing to, what are the audience that you target. So understanding audience, that will allow you to communicate your idea very well, convey a good message. Okay, so it's a great importance to identify the sector of readership of which the paper is meant to submit it to. Okay. Choose the right journal. Okay. So in this stage, I think you need to consult or ask your supervisor, discuss with your supervisor, what are the journal that we should target, what are the, based on the paper. Okay. Usually what we do, like read the reference that you usually cite in your work and see what are the journals that will be there and try to go to one by one and see if they're relevant to your work or not. The thing is to consider here, as I said, readership, who are the readers, maybe you have to look at the recent article of that journal, okay, see if it's applicable to publish your work. And recent publication gives you a good idea what is the trend of the journal, what they are focusing on, and what they really looking for in terms of topics in your paper. Also look at the likelihood of acceptance rate. Okay. Every journal has acceptance rate. Most of the peer-reviewed journals and journals with high impact factors, they have low acceptance rate. So if you have to consider this issue, also the time, if the time is very limited and you need to publish in a very limited time, you have to consider this, because peer-reviewed process sometimes takes time, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years, 3 years, sometimes used to 3 years. So you have to be patient. But if you want to publish in a quick way, so you must consider the journals. Look at the review process of the journals, the decision time from submission to publication. That's very important. Okay. Also the ranking. If the ranking is important to you, or some of the faculties or some of the schools, they have a KPI for their targeting journals. Like for example, here in Ireland, when I was in DCU, so we usually looked at the ABS ranking, Association Business School ranking. Then we look at Web of Science, then Scopus. So it depends on your in your school, or your supervisors might ask you to. Now most of the schools at least focus on Scopus publication, which is the minimum. Some of them they look for Australian. I think in Malaysia, some of these schools and universities consider the Australian ABC. I think ABCD Australian ranking, and so you have to consider the ranking of the journal. Okay, look at the ranking of the journal before you start submitting your paper to that journal. Why I'm saying this is all about avoiding desk reject. Okay? So be very specific, choosing the journals to avoid desk reject. Most of the, like, based on Emerald, they mentioned that many papers are rejected simply because they don't fulfill the journal requirements. So what you need to do before every submission, like spend 5-10 minutes on the journal's paper, the journal introduction and about the journal webpage. See the scope of the journal, what they include, what they don't include. For example, as I said now, if you take a systematic review as an example, so some journals, they mention this clearly in the scope of the journal, that they don't accept review papers or systematic review papers or methodological papers. And some of them, they mention that they welcome systematic reviews. So spend some time, read the scope and the author guideline to avoid any desk reject. Okay, so as I said, these are things that you need to consider. Have a look at the author guideline, read the latest papers, at least one paper from that journal, just to see the similarities and findings. Are they writing the same way you're writing it? So I think when you read the paper of one of the journals, you can get the feelings that, okay, I think they're doing the same thing that I'm doing, so I think it should be okay if I give it a try. Okay. And if you're not sure, sometimes I'll come back to the cover letter, but sometimes we approach the editor. Most of the editors are nice. They just approach them, send them an email, just ask about the idea. Okay, I have this idea, this model, this data. Would it be possible to be a candidate in your applications? So they give you, just to give them a summary, and they give you answer if it's okay or not. Okay. Also include a cover letter. Cover letter is very important, very essential element that you need to include with your submission. And also the second thing that most of the editor look at is the cover letter. So the first thing when you submit a paper, the editor will have a very quick look at your abstract. Then they will go, if they found it, I think it's interesting and they need to know more, they will have a look at your cover letter. Okay. Here's another issue. that I really wanted to emphasize on, like, do not copy and paste it from your thesis. Okay, writing to thesis, it's different from writing to a journal. Okay, I think you all know this. So you like use your thesis as I said, it's a kitchen sink. Okay, it's operation thing that it has everything and has the dishes and everything. Okay, and the paper is your journal. Like you could use the content in your thesis, but do not copy and paste. You have to revise, refine your writing in a way, and also every journal has its own way of writing. So you cannot simply just copy paste from your thesis and put it in a journal template and do something. That's one of the quick desk projects from the editors that you see. There's no flow, there's no logic in your papers. The writing and the sequence is not linked. Okay, so your thesis is your main source. Okay, because it has all your work. You can use it, but do not copy and paste. You have to rewrite in a form of journal writing. All right. So structuring your paper, the standard paper structure of most of the journal application has is this. So you start with the abstract, introduction, methods of research methodology of the paper, result, and sometimes they combine result and discussion, or discussion and conclusion, or sometimes a limitation and they include conclusion, limitation and future with your conclusion. Okay. So I'll walk through each one of these sections. So abstract, the first thing people will see, okay, and also it helps selling your article. All right, so it's the shortest version of your papers. Okay, it should contain all the information that is necessary for the reader to know about your paper. So what you have to include, or what are the examples that you should include? For example, objective of the study, how the study was done, what the result was like, what is the significance of the paper, right? So you have to put all this in the abstract so people can know, because because editor, as I said, are very busy. Like they will spend a minute or less than, or it depends on the editor, to look at your paper and your submission. So the first thing they look at is your abstract. Okay? And based on that, sometimes they will make a decision, okay, whether to proceed with this paper, see if it has a potential to be candidate in the journal's publication or not. And a second thing is readers. The readers of that journal is also, they often look at the abstract, and sometimes they only look at the abstract. Okay? Sometimes they don't go further. If it's not relevant, it doesn't tell much, so they won't pay or they won't download it. Otherwise, they will go and download the paper. Okay? So always ensure that you're clear, honest, concise, and have covered all the major elements in your abstract. As I said, abstract will strongly influence the editor's decision whether to your work will be further considered or rejected. So pay very good consideration to your abstract. Usually, in my way of writing, my experience is I leave the abstract to the end of my writing. So when I write everything, finish everything, I have the whole picture of my paper, how the findings looks like, how the result looks like, and discussion. Based on that, I have full image on my abstract or my paper, so I can put this or summarize this in my abstract. All right. So there are three main types of abstract, and this also based on the journal. It depends on the journal, the category of publishers. The first one is inductive abstract. Okay, so outline the topics covered. piece of writing, so reading can decide whether to read entire document. Okay? Or it could be informative, summarized article based on we call it AMRAD, introduction, methodology, result, and discussion. Okay, and this is the most common type of abstract being used. Because again, this depends on the structure and the format of the journal. Or we have the structured abstract, where I think most of the journals under Emerald Publisher, they use structured abstract. Structured abstract, it is easy in a way that gives you a structure where to add everything or all the summary of your abstract, like for example, purpose, method, methodology, design, limitation, something like that. So again, check your journal format, author guideline, and see what are the choices or what are the type of the abstract they're accepting in the journal. Okay. So this is one example of the informative abstracts where we have the AMRAD technique. So we start with the introduction. So you kind of split your abstract into 3 to 4 pieces. The first piece is where you introduce the topic in general, provide like common sense of the area, then and also summarize the problem or the gap of the research. Then we go to the methodology. So what you did, what is the method that you use in this paper? Okay. Whether it's, for example, a survey or experiment or a technique or feature analysis, whatever. Then we have what are the results, okay? What the results look like, right? Then discussion, or sometimes we put it like a very light summary on the significance of your work and discussion, a little bit of discussion on how this work would contribute to the community or to the body of knowledge of this area. Okay, then we move on to the next section, the introduction. What is the purpose of the introduction or writing introduction? Is actually you want to emphasize on what problem was studied and why your work is necessary. Okay? So you need to consider answering these questions. What is the problem? Okay? Are there any existing solutions that have been introduced? Okay, what's the best? What is the main limitations that's currently there? What do you hope to achieve by finishing this paper? Okay? Also, you have to provide in this section sufficient background information that helps the reader evaluate. Another thing is also convince readers that you clearly know why your work is necessary. Okay, so how to do this? I usually or I prefer using like a structured introduction writing, where you have every paragraph in your introduction as a purpose, okay, or might need to convey something or highlight something. So there are the 5 C's of structuring introductions by Legend of Perfect from Academy Management Review. It's a very high impact journal. So they provide an idea of 5 C's that you need to consider. When you're writing it. Okay? So the first C is the common ground. Like the first paragraph or a couple of paragraphs in your introduction, you need to come with the reader to what we call neutral ground or understanding of the topic. Like we all know that this theory is important. Or, for example, trust has a big influence in the e-commerce websites. So you need to provide a sense of common ground with the reader. So when they said, okay, yeah, so make sure the reader, when they read the first paragraph, like they have this interest and they agree with you. Like I mentioned here, like make them nod their heads. They said, oh yeah, Like you come to establish a common, or we call a common ground with your reader. So these are the first couple of statements, or it depends on the length of your paper or paragraphs. So the second C is the complications. So now when you build this common ground with readers, you have to join the conversations where you tell them, point to the problem or the complication of this common ground. Okay? Although we agree about this, about trust or about, like, for example, anything, but however, I think there is an issue with this. Right? So here where you have to emphasize on the problem, okay, or the whole puzzle together. So now, third C is you need to, which is the third or fourth paragraph, you need to convince the reader that, okay, this complication is a concern, is a problem, is a huge problem. Okay? Try to emphasize this. Okay? So this needs a compelling explanation. Like you need a very solid argument or explanation on this complication or this problem is really concerned nowadays in this area. Okay. You might provide some examples of, for example, inconsistency or contradictions between the results of this complication that make it very concerned to study. Okay, so the reader will be eager to learn what you intended to do. Okay, if you said this, it's very important, the complication is issue, so they will start building interest of what you need to do, or what are you planning to do. Okay, it's very important, very interesting. Yes, I think the issue is there. The problem is a big concern, the complication is a very big concern, so what do you need to do? Okay? So when you reach with the reader to this level, okay, you provide the course of action, which is the fourth C. So in here, you will emphasize on how you will address and solve this problem, okay, or this central complication of your article. For example, you want to develop, refine theory, provide new construct to solve this issue. Okay? But remember to make sure that this course of action or this solution is relevant and effective. Right, so we have 4 C's. Then the final C or the fifth C is your contribution. Okay? So after solving this issue, I think my contribution will be this. Okay? Or solving this problem will contribute to the community, or as I said, body of knowledge of the literature by ABC. Right? How you, for example, how your work will shape and change the conversation. How it makes very distinct from the others, okay? Contribute, and how the ideas in the paper are useful and meaningful, okay? And also the solution. Okay? So common ground, complications, concern, course of action, and contribution. Okay, it's good. I think the advice here is good to keep, like, to put one header. So when you build your introduction, make a header each of these sections in each paragraph. So this will help you with what you write. I think also will guide your writing. Like, for example, the first paragraph you will write in common ground. So make the header, not introduction. Or maybe you can make an introduction, then 1.1 common ground of this issue. Then 1.2 complications. So when you have this in mind, I think you will be able to build a very good and strong introduction. All right. So the second section, literature review, or sometimes they call it related work. So in here, you need to provide the works that you really depend on or consult, okay, in order to understand and examine your research work. The purpose of writing literature review in the paper, okay, is like you provide the readers good understanding of the problem, show the gap in introduce other approach, similar approach in the literature. Also, you provide a good avenue,
Maksudnya?
a good position where you compare or contrast the problem solution, and criticize them, and also give get an overview of the research components, topic theories that you use in your study. Alright?
Buat dia udah dapat itu dulu. Dapat kode kau buat yang di docs tu lah.
Guiding your literature review section. Clarity,
Iyo, kamu tuh nak mengerti tadi mak kau orang menyimak. Amai.
concise with if you know
Docs tu lagi kirim ke Mary itu untuk tanda tangan.
if you're developing, for example, social support theory, customer engagement, just talk in the main component of it. Don't bring other topics or other ideas not directly relevant with the topic that you discuss. Okay, reality. Tell the reader anything that you believe that they may not know and need to. Okay? Relevance, as I said, stick to your topic. Do not lose aim of the paper. Okay. In literature review section is one of the section where you draft your compass of writing. Okay, so make sure to be focused and stay focused in your writing. So one of the good things I used to do here, as I said, bringing the component as a guide for your. So these components usually put them in your title. What is the paper contain? Okay. So these should be included in your literature. And honesty, okay? Like state only what you can provide evidence for. Just everything you do or every finding you find, just cite it. Okay? Content of this section. Okay? So usually what we do is the work that propose different method to solve the same problem, or also you present work that use the same methodology, okay, to solve different problems, or method that's similar to your method, okay, but you or introduced that solve relatively similar problem. Work that is the same theory, like different paper using the same theory that they're using. Okay. So you bring all that and start discussing this. So the structure of this is we start with the introduction section or introduction body, then the body of the literature review, then the summary. So in the introduction, you just provide a few sentences to show the overview of the general space of the topic that you're talking about, then a brief preview of the area that are particularly relevant. Then the body, which is the most important thing, is where you start. Like usually it consists of more than one paragraph. Okay? You start the discussion about criticizing each findings from different papers, and also building some sort of positioning to your paper, where you position your paper to show that okay, ABC from the scholars solve this, but they ignore this, where you can. So you need to position your article within this discussion, okay? To show the gap and how to solve this. Then finally you summarize. So this is another way of you to guide your literature review section. You start with the introduction. The following paragraphs is you discuss these papers that are very relevant to what you do, what you are doing. Discuss them, criticize them, and try to position your research based on this discussion and provide summary. Okay, this is a good example where expert system with applications is one of the good journals. We start with the introduction about the digital cameras, the evolution of digital cameras, the managed generations. Then we start with the body, like bringing similar literature, start to make sense between them, building story between them, okay, to see how the topic has evolved and how you can criticize this, the findings. Then you provide summary to your to this section. Okay, so this is just an example I took from this section is bigger than this, but I just took this just to show you how we build the literature review section, right? So the length of this section, make sure that it's not too long. Okay? Usually look at some examples of similar articles in the journal, see how many paragraphs, and because if it's too long, it will be kind of boring, and your focus will start drifting. Provide relevant information in studies and topics, so make sure to make it very concise and straightforward to the and also again here, include all the studies that are close to your work. Okay? For example, they use different technique,
Pusing deh.
different analysis to solve the problem. And as I said, discuss them and criticize them. Include research component, as I said, for present topic. Have a look at your target journal and see some examples. Do not discuss issues that are not related to the main objective. Stay focused in this section and avoid any drifting from the main focus or the main objective of the work. To do this, I think to make a good flow, I always emphasize on this is like relevance, synthesis, narrative, criticism, and reflection. Okay, so that should guide your writing of this section. So relevance, as I said, I need to emphasize on this. How we do this, like usually before you start your writing, you know the topic. So collect the similar studies that attempt to solve the same problem, okay, and just categorize them in your endnote or whatever, and okay, and start to exclude the article that are not close. Okay, and do not contribute to your paper. Okay. Then after that, read and summarize each paper. A good tip here, I think, sometimes you have overloaded information or papers. You need some sort of management. Okay. So you need to organize your work, especially with literature review. So I used to use Mendeley or NVivo. I think NVivo is a good way of managing your relevant articles or relevant topics. Yes, okay, and Mendeley is then we have synthesis. Try to make links between these articles. Bring the other articles. Try to build a kind of
Apa di sini
mind
apa
mapping,
keluar lah?
technique. We use mind mapping technique to build similarities and differences between these articles. I look at similar method, techniques, and findings. Okay, compare contrast between articles. Also, here is NVivo is a very good tool that helps you build these in some sort of we call them nodes. I think I have an example here. Yeah, this is a good example where you start, for example, building nodes based on the topics, okay, and relevance. Like for example, you start the customer gave me definitions. Read the papers that provide the definitions. Based on that, what are the similars? Put them together. Then come up with a conclusion. Okay, they have two aspects of looking at the customer engagement, behavioral and psychological. Then go to another analysis or another reading. So this will give you some sort of synthesis where you make sense between articles and start building your literature. Right? Narrative or building a good story. I think literature review is about storytelling, but it's a kind of tricky here. It's a story, but you need to be at the same time like provide a good and in-depth discussion. It's not about just telling what people already done. Okay, so then the story about the book has been done. The story should be organized in a way to show how the field problem evolved over time. Here's where I emphasize more in the story. Okay? So you should show the reader how this problem evolved over time and what the people did in order to solve this in a storytelling way, right? So end your story with the limitation of the current work and how the work is needed to be done to solve this issue. All right. Here's a good example of one of the papers. Okay, where you start, as I said, has a good narrative, intelligence, the way of
Apa tu dek?
putting things together, criticizing the literature. Okay? I'm very sorry, background noise, because these are my kids getting ready for school, right? Then we have criticism. So remember, prevailing water shows a lack of depth. So you need to provide a good discussion and good in-depth discussion, okay? Do not just present, as I said, do not just present an overview or some other views. But you need to show your perspective, position and standpoint of your papers, also criticize the theoretical, criticize the findings from previous study, okay? Also like present your theoretical position, okay, based on the theory and why, for example, if you, it's a very simple example, if you're combining two theories, why are you combining this? What is the justification? What is the contribution that this combination or integration between two theories or more would provide to this paper? Who did this before? What is the lack of they didn't cover in this? So the theoretical positioning is very important. The language should indicate the assessment of previous work. Yeah, don't be descriptive. Like be reflective. Do not just describe what people don't, but try to criticize them, compare them what you're doing. Okay, and remember to use what I said. Synthesize these studies and try to build a good story between them. Okay, be aware of the common knowledge in the community where the paper will be appear. Finally, I think reflection. So you need to reflect on your work, how the current gap will be filled, what is the solution to the limitation of the previous work. This is also all the reflection. So a tip here is emphasize on the novelty of your work and the contribution of your work. Okay, so after criticizing all this literature or building a good discussion or argument, so what is the reflection? What is the gap that needs to be filled? How this will help improve the community or the knowledge, body of knowledge of this area? Okay? What is the main contribution that we provide in this paper? Like, remember, that's why I'm saying you do not copy and paste of images, because in the journal, like, it's very specific and you have word limits and also the contribution it should be quantified. Like 1, 2, 3, that's it. But maybe in your thesis you write in very comprehensive way and you have the word limits and you don't have word limit and you can, right? You have different contribution and right? You can't just put everything in one page. Building a good argument. I can't emphasize on this enough. Like, especially in literature review and the discussion, you need to build a very good argument. The first editor and the readers and the reviewer need to see that you have a very good argument when you're dealing with literature or when you're discussing the literature or you're discussing your findings. There's a very good model used a long time ago from Williams and Combs. They call it argument model. So they said you have to provide, in order to build good argument, start with a claim. Okay, so I claim this, or I claim that, or previous study claimed that, okay, previous finding, James, whatever, claimed this, found this. What is the reason? Okay, the reason you have to, after the claim, you have to provide reason. Okay, because of this. Then, what is the evidence that shows this claim is right? Okay? So the claim and the reasons need to be provided with the warrant. The warrant is actually the principle that connects the reason with the claim. Then we have the acknowledgement. And the claim, acknowledgement and response, and the evidence. This is, I think, it's very structured way of building arguments. Okay. You can use it in your literature review, or you can use it in your discussion. Okay. This is from their book, The Craft of Argument. think you can find it, because when this book is being was introduced for students at faculty of law, right? But nowadays it's been this model. I mean, the model is being used in different disciplines. Okay? So moving on, method section or methodology section. So. City, I think we'll take the questions at the end of the session, right? Okay. So we'll continue with this, and then we'll have the questions later. So in the method section, you need to indicate the main method used in the study, and also this section provide all the methodological details for another scientist to be able to duplicate. So make sure you have all the information that allow the readers or other researchers to be able to replicate and duplicate it. Okay? It should be a narrative of steps that you took in, for example, your experiment or your survey. Okay? And also sometimes explain detail, provide supplementary part where you can put it at the end of your paper, or usually they put it in line. So the content of this paper is really depends on the type of the paper. So the way how you structure or how you organize this section is really depend on the type of the paper. But the main thing here, I think, you need to be like, as I said, providing sufficient information. So when the reader read this section, they have full overview on what method they really follow. They need to be robust and appropriate to the objectives. So, as I said, different type could write different way of methodology section. Empirical papers, okay, where you need to put materials, for example, description, the context, settings, techniques to use, the material applied. Okay? If it's a case study paper, it's different. You need to provide, for example, the case, the tools that you use, okay, the settings, piece of the work. If it's methodological paper, it's also different. The method section it could be different. Okay. Also, it's a theory paper. It could be also the methodology section as will provide principles, concept, models of the major framework, how you derive the framework, etc. Okay. So I think I have examples to share with you. Next slide. So here in the empirical paper, first you need, for example, describe the context or the settings of the study. What is the settings of the study? Who are the target subject, okay, of end users, for example, consumers, students, lecturers, teachers? Who are the subject of the study? And the settings. Was it in, for example, for primary school, for e-commerce users, online shopping, fashionists? What is the settings of the paper, of the study? Describe the data collection method and the unit of analysis and the measurement. You need to be very specific from where you top these measurement. If you're using, for example, a survey-based data collection, okay? And the method, what kind of, for example, sampling technique do you use? Was it random, purposive sampling, continuous sampling? What is the sampling that you use? Also, the data collection time. Okay, how long did it take you to collect this data? You need to mention this clearly. Okay. Also, if you use the statistical methods, mention them, sample size, the type of the analysis you use. All these information need to be mentioned. Mostly mentioned in most of the journals. They mention these information in the methodology section. Also, you have to describe how the data, or we call it pre-processing, how the data is being treated, cleaned, or what is. For example, if you're using survey data and you have the data, so is there any suspicious answer pattern in your extreme answers, and how you deal with missing data, for example, or missing values, what techniques you use to replace the missing values? All these information need to be there. So here is an example from Information and Management Journal. Also, this is very good. For example, research model describing 4.2 data collection process, measures, etc. Right? Then we have another type, another example is which is a review paper or systematic review paper. So this in here the section is different. The requirement or the deliverable here is different. So for example, you need to explain and justify the type of the review. So what review are you doing? You've done. Is it like survey, scope review, systematic mapping? What type of review do you undertake? Describe the review protocol. Describe the search strategy. For example, what keywords do you use? What databases do you search? Keywords for the period of time of this review. Also describe the inclusion and exclusion criteria. If you have a quality criteria that you apply in the findings or the data set, you have to explain this as well. Okay, here's an example that we did a couple of years ago. We'll start with the review method, okay, the methodology of this review, systematic review, what is the main preference of this. For example, in here we use Barber Kitchen Hand, it's very well known and established framework for systematic review. Then discussion on the or explanation of review protocol, inclusion and exclusion criteria, search strategy, search selection process. Then you have quality assessment if you have quality assessment criteria. Okay. See, so it's different from type to type. It depends on the type of the paper. Then moving in, I'm curious about the type. Result sections. So in this section where you provide the findings of your analysis, usually it has tables and figures. Okay? So, but remember that usually we have this issue. Some papers that they provide a table, the figures, and they discuss in details these tables and figures in the text. So make sure that not extensive overlap between the tables and figures and in the text section. Okay. So the text only explain present the main points from the tables. So the main findings from the tables, and at the end of the text, for example, you can mention that see table 1 and see figure 1 for more details, see figure 1 or table 1, etc. Include the most important tables and figures. Some analysis, some techniques we use provide like too many tables and figures, and especially for classification or optimization. So you have different figures, and so make sure to choose the most important findings or results that you need to put in the article. Again, this depends on the nature of the paper and the topic. Some of the topics, maybe not in management science, but some of the figures and tables can be provided supplementary findings as well. You can find them online due to the word limit of the journal, right? For that journal, so you provide some of the findings. Consider them as secondary, not primary finding in the supplementary. So details should be clear. Make sure that you have clear, not like blurry images and tables that does not have labels. Make sure that you're professional in this issue. Mention every table and figures in text. So cross-referencing. Okay. Whenever you have table or figure, you have to mention this in the text. So these are common mistakes in this section, like inaccurate data or results. Make sure it's accurate to what you mentioned, for example, in the text and what is defined in the table or the figure. Repetition of data and result. Overuse of tables and figures. As I said, make sure to provide only the important tables and figures. Misplaced information between two sections. So that some of them, like this is one of the very common mistakes. Like you provide information here and information in the methodology section about, for example, the sample size of the data analysis here and there. So you have to be very structured in this section. Okay? Wrong early conclusion. Like I think in this section, you just need to provide what is the result, what is the finding from this result. Do not make any conclusion yet. The conclusion is in the discussion where you start to discuss these. So now moving to the discussion section, which is what do the results mean? So now here we can start discussing your results. So this is, I think, to me, is one of the most difficult parts to write in your paper. Okay? You need to give like a very good consideration in this section. So remember things to do. Check here. How do your results relate to the original questions? Okay, or how these results answer your questions or objective outlined in the paper, introduction to the paper. Can you reach a conclusion smoothly after discussion? Or not? Sometimes it's very hard to find to reach out the conclusion after your discussion. Do you provide interpretation of each result or not? And also, are the results consistent with what other investigators reported or not? If they are not, so you need to provide justifications of why they are different, and what do you think the main reasons, or could be some reasons, okay? Are there any limitation of these reasons? Okay? So when you start writing this section, so there's a few things that you need to consider. Explain what a result means. What is this result mean to the reader? Why, if they are different, why they are different from other work? Relate your discussion back to the objective or the question. Usually, most of the time, we end discussion with this, and also the interpretation of your result in light of other partnership results. So that's the main thing. So you discuss your finding of these results in light with what people before you have conducted and what they reached. Okay? And based on this, you see what is the difference. If they are similar, if they are different, why? I think my advice here to when you finish this section, just give it to like your colleague or students in the same area for friendly review. See if this section makes sense compared to the result, for example, to the result and the main introduction section. Do not make statements that go beyond what you found. Okay, so just discuss the results that already have in your this paper. Do not introduce new terms or new ideas in discussion. This shows lack of a flow and logic in your paper. Make sure to be consistent. Do not provide new topics or introduce a new idea that you need to discuss. Also, do not make a harsh judgment on the previous study. Try to be reasonable when you discuss the previous findings. Okay, like do not say like my finding is the findings before us is for example we've done nothing or the accuracy level was very low. You need to just be very reasonable when you're taking other people's findings into criticism. Usually we use like quantitative description in the discussion. Okay, don't use like very qualitative words in this section. You need to be very specific. Conclusion. The last section, a clear conclusion section helps reviewer to judge you more easily. Okay? So in here, what you need to do, like summarize and conclude, okay? Restating the main argument and presenting key conclusion. So another thing is here is that say what extent your original questions have been answered or not. Also, state the findings or the significance of your work, like framework or like theory, or the significance of your work. You need to mention in this conclusion. Also, state the limitations. Some journals they have the limitation of the future work under conclusion, and some of them they have the limitation and the future work under the discussion. So make sure to follow the author guideline and see some examples from the journal. Also state what are the implications of further research. That's very important issue, and some journals they have this with the discussion and some they have with it. So what is the implication for further research from your findings? Okay. And remember, do not summarize and so do not summarize the paper. All right. So summary is for your abstract. Again here, do not start a new topic. Like just conclude, summarize, findings, the significance of your work, okay? And if there is a room for improvement from your limitation, you can consider. Make judgment about the impact. Like, if you want to do any discussion or make any criticism, just make it in the discussion. The conclusion is just to summarize findings and significance of it. Like contradicting, as I said, anything you said earlier. Make it smooth. Follow the logic of your paper, right? Here's a good example from different papers. I think it's also in the management field of research, International Management Journal, Journal of Research and Information Science and Technology. So where we can see here the conclusion, just summarize the significance of the work, practical relevance, and some of them, as I said, they mention the limitation of your of the findings. All right. So review and revision, like you finish your draft, and you're ready to submit it to the journals. I think here the advice here: don't rush things. Take it easy and slowly. Okay? But before you submit, like I said, read, revise, try to improve. You have to give a good attention to the English. Okay. Usually use proofreading services, improve your English of the manuscript. Okay. Make sure manuscript is in journal format. I know that most of the journals, especially Elsevier and Emerald, they provide like format free. Okay, but some of them they use a template that you need to follow. And also here, I think ask for friendly review, not from your supervisor. Your supervisor should be a collaborator with you. He knows everything you've done with the paper. But ask different, if you're a staff member, like other colleague, or if you're a PhD student, ask your friend who's same area, print it, give it to him, have a look, let them read, give you other comments. That's a good way to consider any mistake before you submit. All right. Okay, so we submit the paper, everything went smooth, and you got a request for revision. That's good. I'm not saying that you reject it. If you're rejected, that's fine. So you're now in what we call it in the publishing cycle. If the reader has, the editor has interest in your papers, you pushed it to the reviewers, and so now you are in publishing cycle, and the reviewer send you a few comments to consider or some. So don't panic. Like most of the editor or the authors, they receive at least one round of review. So take the comments and try to consider them all. But if your paper is rejected, as I said, don't give up. Rejection is normal. I still remember when I was first trying to send to journal at the beginning of my PhD, you get frustrated and angry, and no, it's part of the game. Okay, so just ask why and listen carefully. Okay, so most of the editors, they give you like detailed comments of why your paper is rejected, and if the paper went to the review and rejected, they'll also include the reviewer comments. Okay, try again. Like, see, one mistake most of the students do here is they just take the paper, find another journal, and send it straight away. No, just take your time, read these comments. My practical advice is, like, don't look at these comments for the first week, all right? Because you'll be angry and you don't know, you might act in a very unprofessional way. So take a break, come back to the comments after a week or two, and start like reading them. Just read them. Some of them give very good like sense about your papers, and after that, try again. When you improve the paper, you feel that it's now ready to go for another journal. Okay? Avoid these mistakes and try with another journal. All right. So this is an example of the acceptance and rejection of one of the Emerald journals. So this journal accepts only 30% of the submission. Like if you look here, 100% 100 submission, like even with the editor decision, 28%, sorry, 28% might ask for revise, okay, or they send it to the first review. After that, you get decisions. 20%, 20%, 29% could be rejected. 37 is acceptance. But see here, even with the second round of review, your paper might be rejected. Okay, so you might go the first round, you address the comments, send them back, you review them again. There's like 2% of rejections, even with the second round of revision, or sometimes third round of revision. So that's why you need to be patient, focus on the comments, try to address them very, very well. Acceptance rate, as I said, it's very low with these journals. Like, for example, if you look at, this is Elsevier acceptance rate. In 2022, like from 3,668 papers, they accept only 500, which is 14%. So you're trying to find a space with this competition. It's very high competition. So you need to find you fit there, find a space. So that's why I said don't rush, make it perfect. If they send it for review, that's a very good news. If your paper went for review process, that's really good news. Wait for that. If you have the comment, so then you address them very well, like how to revise to your paper, like acknowledge the editor and set revision deadline. If things are not clear with the comments, you can clarify understanding. Okay, if you have a doubt, ask again, no problem. Consult your colleague or your team. Okay, do not do this alone. If there's a team with a paper, this should be like discussed with the team and allocated to everyone, and everyone do some part of this. Okay, you have to meet the deadline. So usually the editor will give you three months, or if it's major, really major, up to 6 months, or it depends on the level of the correction. Also, you need to, so when you finish your writing, when you finish your writing the comments or addressing the comment, you should bring a cover letter that answer all the comments or the reviewer concerns. This is an example of what I used to do. Like, you have to address every comment in detail. First comment of the respondent, how you respond to this, if there is any justification that need to be done, write it there, make it very clear. Okay, but like you need editors in these journals, they look for these substantial level of R&R, revision and resubmit. Okay, so quick tips here: be serious, focus, addressing each comment, provide good justification. As I said, if there is a conflict, I know that some reviewers, they provide nonsense comments, but you have to address them, whether you agree or disagree with the comment. If you disagree, provide very politely, provide the reasons why you're not taking this into consideration, or why there is a conflict here. Here's the reference and the proof of that, etc. All right. Review process, it's a golden opportunity for me, I think, to improve your research. So I remember when I sent my first SLR paper during my PhD, like only one reviewer sent me 3 pages of review, 3 pages of comments. That was only one reviewer. And this, I think, to me was a very good chance for me to improve. I remember my paper was systematic review. So it totally improved my literature review section on my chapter 2 based on that comments, like, because he was expert in the area and he provided very detailed and advices. And so, as I said, review comments from reviewers, because if you're lucky enough, the reviewer will be one of the call them guru or experts in the area, so he give you very deep and good ideas and comments that improve your work. Okay. Also, sometimes these comments open an opportunity and ideas for you. I give you just a personal example that happened to me. So I have this paper that's been published in 2 years, like 2021, Technology and Society. It's a Q1 journal, all right? So during the review process of this paper, so one of the reviewers' comment is this. So he said, okay, so you mentioned that the main characteristic of social commerce is this, but why Hussein and Hussein in 2016 they mentioned this aspect of that distinguish between social commerce and e-commerce as main factors. So social aspect, website interactivity. So he said, I'm expecting to find factors such as community, collaboration to be included in it. So like he was referring to my paper, okay? So he was referring to this paper that I did in 2016. So in this paper, as I said, it's a smart review will provide like 4 characteristics that distinguish between e-commerce and social commerce. So I said, oh, okay, I think that's a good idea that we can like, so to address this comment, I said that's a good idea, but we already collect the data and we might consider this in the limitation of this one. But what I did at the same time, so that triggered an idea that we might build another paper from this. So what we did, I went back to this review paper, collect like these are the characteristics that we did. So I built this model. At that time, I got funding, and so we collect data to to test this model for Etsy. So Etsy is one of the very common social commerce marketplace, especially in the UK, in Ireland, and most of Europe. And so we wrote the paper, we sent it to Internet Research, and it's now in the second round of review. So you never know that these comments that comes from reviewers, like read them one more time, read them in detail, see there might be some sort of new ideas comes from these because they are expert, right? Okay, so okay, let's assume that your paper is already accepted and published. That's a good news. You need to promote your work because your work is like hasn't done yet. When your paper is published, you need to promote your work. Okay, like you have to contact authors, for example, in your reference list. Use social media to share the link of your paper. LinkedIn, I think it's a very good place where you have to share these news, promote your own publication. Okay, also on your media to brand your image as a researcher. That's a good way where you can build. Okay, so these are tips. Or to me, I think toward publishing in high impact factors, you need these things to come together. First, you need a good idea. Okay? New ideas, hot topics. Like as I said, try to find the hot topic in your area. Okay? Like go to the journals, follow the journals that are really in your area. Do you think that accept these journals as a target for you to publish, and see what is what they're looking for, what they from time to time the editorial press where they publish editorial trend of the journal with the journal is going in the future, and what are the main topics that these are I think good topics or hot topics that, for example, nowadays, as I said, ChatGPT, augmented reality, effect of COVID-19, etc., you know, metaverse. So these are interesting topics. Then you need to build a network in order to publish in a very good journals. Like you need to build what we call research team. I said this at the beginning, but you need to emphasize on this. I think as a PhD researcher, you're now an independent researcher. You need to build your own research teams. Like try to find who are the experts in your area, in your specific area. Try to email them, follow them in LinkedIn. Right? If you have a good idea of writing a paper, or you really write in the process of writing a paper, just reach out to them, ask them in a friendly email if they are you are polite, if they want it to be as a co-authors. This is a good way of why I'm saying this. This will bring lead to the third pillar, which is the innovation or the creativity. Okay. Having this network, I think it will make, for example, good writing. Okay, these experts will have like years of experience in your area, so they will improve your papers writing in English. The presentation, the way how the paper presented will be improved. Also, the argumentations. Another thing is very important: scope of the journals. Like, choose the right journal. To avoid any early rejection, you have to choose the right journal. As I said, we need to emphasize on this. Look at the scope of the journal. Good way of finding place to publish it, to look at the special issues of these journals. Sometimes you find like exactly special issue in your area. So special issue is a good way to publish because they are time limited, very specific. Also, you have a look at the editorial board, see who's there. You might know the background and the universities, and this is also a good way of building networking and see who are the leader in this journal. Author guidelines is very very important. You need to read author guidelines. Also, take some samples. Like download the most cited papers, most downloaded papers, read them, so see how they write, structure, etc. Okay. And at the end of the day, I think good publication is all about data. That's my personal experience. Money, academic funding, and time. So if you're able to manage these or have these three puzzles, put them together, good data, and you have funding to get the data, or funding to build your team or build your experiment, and the time, you need the time to write a very good. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah, that's my. Hope I didn't exceed the time. Thank you very much for your attention, for your time. If you have any questions or any feedback, I'll take the questions now.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Abdul Salam Musalim, for the very informative and wonderful lecture. I'm very sure many of the participants today will publish a very good journal paper after this.
Hopefully.
Okay, for your information, okay, this program has reached more than 200 participants. So thank you for your support. Okay, now for the question and answer session from the audiences. So maybe I will the first question that we got around 3:59 p.m. Okay, doctor, if do review journal, what the technique or categories abstract? Question from Almi Mahmood.
Structure. I think he's referring to structured abstract.
Structured abstract.
I think, as I said at the beginning, so structured abstract or categorized abstract are easy to write because so they are structured. They will direct you what to write. A good example of this is Emerald. So Emerald, most of the journals in Emerald, they provide abstract for structured abstract. So you just follow, for example, the purpose. So in the first section is the purpose. Just write the purpose, the overall purpose of the paper. Second is the method of the design. So just write 1 line or 2 lines on this. Okay? Make sure it does not exceed 250 words. So to me, the most challenging is the interactive. The inductive one, rather than the structure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, doctor. And there are many questions from the participants. They want to have your slides, doctor.
Well, sure. After this, I'll forward this to Sadie, and she will send it this later. Yeah.
Okay. Some statement from Zohad Hassan Sain. He said that your lecture today was very informative session with full of information. Okay, and then from Nazrif, something very new for me as I'm currently writing journal papers. Nice job. Hope I can have the recording ASAP. Okay, we will send it to you. Okay, so Question from Jose Zhou. What is the section of measure? How to write it?
Oh, so measurement uh, mostly used in the survey-based papers. So when you build your survey, you use a question. Usually we call them a question, but they are items. Okay, when you ask the respondent. So these are we call them measurement. Okay, so when we build our survey, we have these measurements. When you write your paper, you should have one section to detail from where you get these measurements. Okay, and how you modify them, for example, and how you improve them. So usually when we do this, to modify the items, we do what we call content and base validity, right? So we did content validity when you experiment the representation of each item to the definition of the construct. So in this section, you have to explain this in detail, where you get these items from, okay, and how you improve them to make them relevant to your context. Okay?
Okay, Doctor. Okay, question from Hang Lee Soon. Is the table and figures can be colored or shall be in black and white?
That depends on the journal's guideline. So most of the time it's colored because these journals, most of the publication is online, so there is no cost for printing this. So I prefer to if there is a figure, make sure it's colored, of course.
Right. Okay, question from Behzad Nazari. They have 4 questions here. So the first one, maybe I can just write 1 or 2 from here. How can we make a balance between the acceptance time and keeping our paper and its references updated?
Can you repeat this? I don't get it.
How can we make a balance between the
Uh-huh.
acceptance time and keeping
Okay.
our paper and its references updated?
Oh yeah. Usually, first make sure, that's a good point actually, I haven't mentioned this. Make sure to use an updated literature. Second thing is the review process, it's not years, it's just some of them, as I said, when I mentioned 2-3 years, it's just not one review cycle. It's, for example, first round, second round, third round. That's why it takes sometimes. So each years, 1 year or 1 year and a half. But for example, so the first cycle or first review round is, so most of the peer review journals, they said that maximum is 8-16 weeks. So that's not a long time. So I don't think it's affect the update of your literature. You don't have to update the literature. If there is the thing is that just make sure, for example, if you're writing paper now in 2013, make sure that you use the reference of the last 3 to 4 years, right? Apart from like if you're using theory, I know some theories are very old and it's okay, but I mean the topic itself, data, etc.
Okay. Next question. Could you give us a rough idea about the minimum number of reviewed papers in the SLR?
So that's it depends on the topic and the time frame that you use, but usually it is 100 and plus. I mean, the final data set should be 100 and plus. But like as I said, it depends on the nature of it. Sometimes it's a systematic review and meta-analysis. So meta-analysis usually look at the empirical studies. So sometimes you end up with 40, 60 papers. But meta-analysis is slightly different from systematic review. But really it depends on the area and the topic, to be honest. The most important thing, sorry, Siti, the most important thing is not the number of the reviewed papers, but the process, how you reach to this number. As I said, which should be included in the research methodology section of SLR. how you come up to, how you finally like reach to this number. What is the procedure, right? That's the most important.
Okay, doctor. Okay, next question. From Aisha Pervise. Which management science journals are recommended for publishing papers, especially refer the Q1, Q2 journals?
Like we have like a couple of numbers, but management, we have management science decisions, information management, international management, International Journal of Information Management, Academy Review of Management Review. So these just a couple of them. But, usually, just go to the journal citation report that released every year. You can find these journals. Basically, you can download the Excel sheet and you can filter this based on the number. On the name of the journal. Academy.
Okay, doctor. Next question from Tulasi. Hi, doctor. Any tips to those who having difficulty to write a paper due lack of confidence on their writing skill?
Right, as I said, academic writing is it's a challenge. We all not are native speakers, so to me it's a skill that you need to work on. Make it make it a goal to improve your academic skills, whether you attend UTM or workshop for writing academic papers or improve your English. But two main things here: use proofreading services and try to collaborate with authors that are native speakers and they're expert in the area. So maybe their job will be improving your English paper. Maybe you have the paper fully completed, but you just ask them for, please edit the paper, or so that's a good way of, and you learn from this, right?
Okay, next question from Yan Jimiao. Okay, doctor, what is the recommended sequence of writing a paper? Method and discussion first, or follow the sequence of the paper, starting from the introduction?
Oh, the way how I write is no, I don't write. That's a very good question. I don't start with writing introduction. No. So we usually what I did. So as I said now, my pillars is data, time, and funding. So when we have the funding, collect the data. We have the idea, collect the data. So I start with the analysis. Okay? So I start with the data analysis, do the analysis or the experiment, see how the result look like, okay, and go backward. Okay, so or sometimes I start with a bit of literature review to build the model if I have model, okay? Or like if it's experiment or the same thing to build the hypothesis and model and do the analysis, and after that write the analysis discussion. Then the last two parts I usually write is introduction and abstract. So that's my way. That's the way I write. I think because to me that makes sense. I need to see how the results look like, or how I can build a discussion based on this. I think that would be easy for me when I have the result. I know where the paper is going, the findings and the discussion. It would be easy to build the introduction and the abstract.
Okay, doctor. Okay, very interesting. Okay, next question from Ahmad Firdaus Razali. The first question, how to find the right journal that is suitable with our topic? Is there any websites that can help?
Oh, that's a good question. So tip number one here is usually, so when you have your paper ready and you don't know or you're not sure of the journal, so most of the publisher, they have what we call a journal finder tools. Okay, like for example, in Elsevier, they have a journal finder tool where you go there, put your abstract, the keywords, and the publisher will suggest to you based on like it's a just matching algorithm with the keywords and the abstract, and would suggest to you the top matching journals, and it goes down based on the matching of the keywords and the abstract, and it goes down. That's one way of of finding a right journal. Second way is you might go to the list of your reference and see what is the most cited journals that you used to cite already. Go to that journal, have a look. Maybe they have a special issue, or maybe they already accept this type of papers. Why not you try to send it to them?
Okay. Okay, doctor. Very good information. Okay. Second question from Ahmad Firdaus. I don't understand. Sometimes I found journals with WOS/ISI index, but there is no quartile. Can you please explain why?
You don't. Can you repeat this?
I don't understand. Sometimes I found journals with ISI index, but
Okay.
there is no quartile. Quartile 1, quartile 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you mean the Q. So let me distinguish between two things: impact factor and the quartile, or the Q, we call Q1, Q2. So the impact factor is it's like an indicator, okay, to see the impact of this journal, okay, and this depends on how we calculate this the number of publications, this number of citation, and give you the impact factor of the journal of the last year. But the quartile, or the Q, is just the category of the paper based on the discipline of this paper. So every publisher, they have category of field of research, and they assign these journals to each category. So some journals, they have two categories of discipline, okay? So each discipline, they divide it into 4, I think, quartile. First 25%, which is the top, which is called Q1 top, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So that is the quartile of a Q. So if you publish in a Q1 paper, that means your journal that you're publishing is at the top 25% I of this discipline. So that's the category, okay? So sometimes the journals are not in this category, although it has impact factor, because impact factor is based on the publisher. Like Elsevier, Web of Science, they can calculate the impact factor. Scopus, they can calculate the impact factor. Right? So sometimes they're not indexed in quartile. They may be in Q4, or they're not in this. They're not in the top 100, for example. I hope this answers.
Okay, doctor. Okay, next question. Okay, from Liu Qian. For conceptual paper, doctor, is methodology a necessary component?
It depends on the target. So what I mean by this, so if it's a conceptual paper, and you by the way, this is a quick advice. Conceptual papers, they're not favorable for like high impact journals. You need to see the full papers, but at the same time, you need to provide methodology section, where you need to add in this methodology section